Commander Deho stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and tried not to show his anger. The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 200 different alien species. Crystal walls stretched up so high that Deho could barely see the ceiling. Floating platforms held the council members, each one looking down at him like judges at a trial. Next to him stood Ambassador Jiwoo. She kept her face calm, but Deho could see her hands shaking slightly. They had both prepared for this moment. For months. 50 years had passed since humanity first met aliens. 50 years of hard work, of proving themselves, of trying to join the galactic community as full members. Today, the council would announce their decision. Councillor Theron rose from his platform. He was Valorian, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His skin looked like polished stone, and his eyes glowed with a soft blue light. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber without needing any technology to amplify it. "We have completed our evaluation of humanity," Theron said. His words were translated instantly into every language spoken in the chamber. "For 5 decades, we have observed your species. We have studied your culture, your history, your behavior. We have analyzed every aspect of your civilization." Jiwoo stepped forward. "And we have worked hard to meet every requirement," she said. Her voice was strong despite her nervousness. "We have shared our technology. We have established peaceful trade with 17 species. We have helped with disaster relief on 4 different worlds. We have kept every promise we made." "Number, this is true," Theron acknowledged. "Humanity has been cooperative. You have caused no major conflicts. You have been useful trading partners." Deho felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this would actually work. Then Theron continued. "However, the Council has decided to deny humanity's petition for full membership." The words hit Deho like a physical blow. Around the chamber, alien representatives began making various sounds. Some seemed surprised. Others made noises that might have been agreement. Deho looked at Jiwoo and saw the color drain from her face. "On what grounds?" Deho demanded. He had been a military strategist before becoming a diplomat. He knew how to keep his voice level even when he was furious. "We have met every single requirement you set for us." High Judge Xyloth floated forward. He was Kryn, a species that looked almost like living geometric shapes. "The requirements were indeed met," Xyloth said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "But we have identified a fundamental problem with your species. Humanity is too chaotic." "Chaotic?" Jiwoo repeated. "What does that mean?" A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, rotating slowly. Then the display zoomed in to show different parts of the planet. "Your species speaks over 7,000 different languages," Xyloth explained. "You are divided into more than 200 separate nations. These nations frequently disagree with each other. Sometimes they even fight wars against each other. We have had peace on Earth for 30 years, Deho said through gritted teeth. Yes, but the potential for conflict remains, Theron said. Your nations still maintain separate militaries. They still compete for resources. They still have different laws, different customs, different beliefs. Another council member spoke up. This was a Mindar, a species that looked like floating jellyfish made of light. We have run predictive models on human behavior, presented, and have run, the Mindar said. Your decision-making patterns are impossible to calculate. When presented with the same situation twice, humans often make completely different choices. That's called adaptability, Jiwoo said. It's a strength, not a weakness. It is chaos, Xyloth corrected. Every other species in the Council has achieved internal consistency. When we study Valorian society, we can predict how they will respond to any situation with 98% accuracy. The same is true for every member species. But humans, the Revel, the Five, Welver, our accuracy drops to barely 60%. The holographic display changed. Now it showed examples of human culture. Music from different regions. Art in thousands of different styles. Books and movies and games, each one unique and different. Your culture defies logical categorization. The Mindar continued. You create art that has no practical purpose. You tell jokes that only make sense if one understands multiple layers of context. You write stories about things that never happened and never will happen. You make decisions based on emotions rather than logic. We make decisions based on both, Deho argued. We use emotion and logic together. That makes us more effective. Not less. Theron shook his head slowly. The Council cannot accept this. The galactic community requires stability. We have maintained peace for 8,000 years because every member species follows predictable patterns. We can plan. We can coordinate. We can trust each other. Because we understand each other. But you don't understand us, Jiwoo said. Her voice was sad now, rather than angry. And instead of trying to understand, you're pushing us away. We are protecting the stability of the galaxy, Xyloth said. Humanity represents a systemic risk. Your chaos could spread. Other species might begin to see your unpredictability as something to emulate rather than avoid. The entire structure of galactic civilization could become unstable. The holographic display changed again. This time, it showed mathematical models, probability cascades, prediction algorithms. Deho didn't understand all the details, but he got the basic message. According to the Council's calculations, adding humanity to their civilization would create too many variables, too many unknowns, too much chaos. So what happens now? Deho asked. He already knew the answer, but he wanted to hear them say it. Humanity will remain in quarantine status, Theron announced. You will be restricted to your solar system. Trade will be permitted, but closely monitored. No human vessels will be allowed to travel beyond the boundaries we have established. You're putting us in a box, Jiwoo said quietly. We are maintaining order, Theron replied. However, we are not completely closing the door. If humanity can achieve internal consistency within the next 10 years, we will reconsider your application. Internal consistency, Deho repeated. You want us to become more like you. We want you to become predictable, Xyloth said. Reduce your languages to one. Unify your governments. Standardize your culture. Eliminate the chaos that makes you so difficult to integrate into our civilization. And if we don't? Jiwoo asked. Theron's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. Then the quarantine will become permanent. Complete isolation. No trade. No contact. Humanity will be alone in the universe. The meeting ended shortly after that. There was nothing more to say. Deho and Jiwoo returned to their ship in silence. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to figure out how to explain this to their planet. 3 weeks to accept that 50 years of work had ended in failure. That night, Deho sat alone in his quarters. He pulled up a secure communication channel and contacted General Tae-young back on Earth. The general's face appeared on the screen. He was older than Deho, with gray hair and tired eyes. They denied us, Deho said simply. Tae-young nodded. He didn't look surprised. They think we're too chaotic, too unpredictable, too dangerous to their perfect little civilization. Interesting, Tae-young said. He leaned back in his chair. So, they're afraid of us. They're not afraid, Deho corrected. They just think we're a risk they don't want to take. Same thing, Tae-young said. He smiled slightly. They think our chaos makes us weak. What if they're wrong? What if our chaos makes us strong? Deho looked at the general for a long moment. Then he smiled too. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who just realized something important. Being underestimated can be an advantage, Deho said. Exactly. Tae-young agreed. Let them think we're too chaotic to be useful. Let them think we're too unpredictable to be dangerous. We'll see how long that lasts. The communication ended. Daeho sat in the darkness of his quarters and thought about the future. The council had made their decision. They thought humanity was too chaotic to join their perfect civilization. Maybe they were right. But maybe chaos wasn't the weakness they thought it was. Maybe it was something else entirely. Something the council didn't understand yet. Something they would learn to respect. Or fear. Captain Sujin checked her navigation display for the third time. The coordinates were correct. Talos Prime should be just ahead. A simple mining colony on the edge of Valorian space. Her ship, the Wandering Star, was carrying medical supplies and entertainment equipment. It was supposed to be a routine delivery, the kind of boring run that paid the bills but didn't make for interesting stories. Something's wrong, said Youngmi from the communications station. She frowned at her screen. I'm getting distress signals from the colony. Multiple sources. They're under attack. Attack? Sujin sat up straighter. From who? This area is supposed to be completely safe. Engineer Hyun-woo looked up from his station. Captain, I'm picking up weapons fire. Energy signatures I don't recognize. Whatever's happening down there, it's serious. Sujin activated the main view screen. Talos Prime appeared in the distance. A small planet with a single large dome that housed the mining colony. Around the dome, she could see ships, dozens of them, moving in perfect formation like a swarm of insects. They were attacking the colony's shields with coordinated precision. Those aren't pirates, Hyun-woo said. His voice was quiet. That's military-level coordination. Youngmi's fingers flew across her console. I'm trying to identify the attackers. Scanning their ships now. She paused, her eyes going wide. Captain, according to the database, those are Krik's ships. That's impossible, Sujin said. The Kriks were wiped out 200 years ago. I'm just telling you what the database says. Those energy signatures match Krik's technology exactly. Sujin made a decision. She had made quick decisions all her life. It was part of being human. Part of that chaos the council was so afraid of. Take us in closer. Youngmi. Try to contact the colony. The Wandering Star moved toward Talos Prime. As they got closer, Sujin could see the situation was even worse than she thought. The colony's shields were failing. Sections flickered and went dark. Then came back online. Then failed again. The Krik ships were using some kind of adaptive weapons that learned to overcome the shields. 3 Valorian defense ships floated near the colony. They weren't moving. They weren't firing. They just hung in space like statues. What are they doing? Hyun-woo asked. Why aren't they defending the colony? Youngmi finally got through to the colony's communication system. A voice came through, speaking in Valorian. The translation system converted it to Korean. This is Governor Velon. Who is this? Captain Sujin of the Wandering Star. We're a human cargo ship. We saw your distress signal. What's happening? There was a pause. You're human? You need to leave immediately. This area is not safe. We can see that, Sujin said. We're offering to help. We have weapons. Not many. But we can fight. Absolutely not, Governor Velon said. His voice was firm. Council regulations forbid human interference in military situations. The defense fleet has already requested reinforcements. They will arrive in 3 days. Quote, Sujin looked at the view screen. The shields were failing faster now. 3 days? Your shields won't last 3 hours. That is not your concern. Leave this system immediately. The communication cut off. Sujin sat back in her chair and cursed quietly. Around her, the bridge was silent. Hyun-woo and Youngmi were both looking at her, waiting for orders. Captain, Youngmi said. What do we do? Before Sujin could answer, a new communication came through. This one was audio only, and it was encrypted. Whoever was calling didn't want the Valorians to know. Captain Sujin? This is Lieutenant Jaehwa. I'm human, stationed at the colony as a security observer. Lieutenant, what's the situation? Bad, and getting worse. The Krik's weapons use adaptive AI. Every time our defense systems try a new strategy, the Kriks learn and counter it. The Valorian ships can't do anything because their military doctrine requires them to wait for fleet coordination. They literally can't act without orders from command. That's insane. That's Valorian military procedure. Zero room for independent action. Meanwhile, there are 30,000 civilians in this colony, and the shields are about to fail completely. Sujin thought fast. Her ship wasn't designed for combat. The Wandering Star was a cargo hauler that she had bought cheap and fixed up. It had 2 small defense turrets that she had installed herself. Against a Krik's fleet, it was basically useless, unless she used it in a way the Kriks wouldn't expect. Lieutenant, can you give me access to the colony's defense network? That would be completely against regulations. I know. Can you do it? There was a pause. Then Jaehwa laughed. Sending you the access codes now. Governor Villon is going to be very angry about this. Add it to the list of things the council is angry at humans about. Sujin said. She turned to her crew. Hyunwoo, I need you to modify our engine output. Make it as irregular as possible. Random power fluctuations. Unpredictable EM emissions. Everything you can think of. You want me to make our engines work badly on purpose? Exactly. Youngmi, start broadcasting on every frequency. Music, old Earth radio shows, random conversations, anything. I want our communication signature to be complete noise. Captain, the Kriks will target us immediately if we approach. That's what I'm counting on. Sujin said. She activated the ship's weapons systems. 2 small turrets rose from the hull. They were designed to scare off pirates, not fight military vessels. The Wandering Star dove toward the Krik's fleet. Hyunwoo had done his job perfectly. The ship's engines sputtered and surged, creating an energy signature that made no sense. Youngmi's communications filled the area with random noise. From outside, the Wandering Star looked like a ship having multiple system failures. The Krik ships noticed immediately. 5 of them broke off from the main attack and moved to intercept. Their weapons locked on, preparing to fire. Here they come, Youngmi said. She sounded scared but determined. Keep broadcasting, Sujin said. Hyunwoo, give me a burst of speed, then drop to minimum power, then full reverse. Make it random. The ship lurched forward, then slowed dramatically, then shot backward. The Krik's ships fired, but their targeting systems couldn't track the random movements. Energy beams passed through empty space where the Wandering Star should have been, but wasn't. It's working, Hyunwoo said. He sounded amazed. Their AI can't predict our movements because we're not following any pattern. Sujin pulled up the colony defense network. Now we get creative. Youngmi, access the colony's mining systems. They use explosives to break up asteroids, right? Yes, but those explosives are stored in the outer ring, far from the colony. Perfect. Hyunwoo, can you rig those explosives to detonate remotely? If I have access to the mining network, yes, but Captain, those explosives are for mining. They're not designed as weapons. That's the point, Sujin said. The Krik's AI is looking for military responses. Let's give them something completely unexpected. Over the next 2 hours, the Wandering Star and the colony worked together in ways that made no sense to military doctrine. They used mining explosives as improvised mines. They hacked the colony's entertainment systems to create false sensor readings. They broadcast random signals that confused the Krik's coordination. The Krik's fleet had never encountered anything like it. Their AI was sophisticated, designed to adapt to any military strategy. But humans weren't using military strategy. They were using chaos. A mining drone, reprogrammed by Hyunwoo, flew straight into a Krix ship and exploded. 3 Krix ships collided with each other when Youngmi broadcast false navigation data. The colony's water systems, pressurized to maximum, were vented into space, creating clouds of ice that blocked sensors. Nothing they did made sense. Nothing followed proper military doctrine. Every action was improvised, random, unpredictable. And it worked. The Krix AI began making mistakes. It tried to predict the next random action and prepared counters, but there was no pattern to predict. It attempted to coordinate responses, but the constant chaos prevented coordination. The perfect military machine stumbled when faced with perfect military chaos. 4 hours after the Wandering Star arrived, the last Krix ship retreated. The fleet scattered, breaking their perfect formation, fleeing into deep space like animals running from something they didn't understand. The Valorian reinforcements arrived 3 days later, to find the colony intact and the Krix gone. Governor Velen stood in his office and stared at Captain Sujin with an expression that might have been anger or respect or confusion. "You violated council regulations," he said. "We saved 30,000 lives," Sujin replied. "You used tactics that made no sense. Random flight patterns, mining explosives as weapons, entertainment systems for electronic warfare. It was chaos. It worked." Governor Velen was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I will be filing a report about this incident. The council needs to know about your dangerous unpredictability." "You do that," Sujin said. She was tired and wanted to go home. "Tell them we're too chaotic to be useful. Tell them we're too random to be trusted." She walked out of the office. Behind her, Governor Velen watched her go. He would file his report. He would tell the council exactly what happened. He would explain how humans saved the colony using methods that made no sense. And somewhere in the council chambers, observers would read that report and dismiss it. "Luck," they would say. "Unsustainable improvisation." It wouldn't work twice. They were wrong. But they wouldn't realize that until it was too late. Dr. Hana sat in a council research facility and tried to explain something that she knew the aliens wouldn't understand. Around her, xenopsychologists from 6 different species watched with expressions she couldn't quite read. They had invited her here to study human chaos, to understand what made humanity so unpredictable. "It's not that we're random," she explained for the 3rd time. "We just process problems differently than you do." The lead researcher, a Valorian named Kenthos, made a gesture that might have been disagreement. "But your behavior cannot be predicted. We have shown you this in our models." Hana pulled up a holographic display. "Let me show you an example. A ship's engine fails during flight. What would a Valorian engineer do? Ground reseating the particle. Follow the repair protocol," Kenthos said immediately. Section 7, Subsection 12. Engine failure procedures are clearly documented. And if the protocol doesn't work, move to the next protocol option. There are 47 documented solutions for engine failures. What if none of them work? Kenthos looked confused. That scenario is statistically impossible. The protocols cover every possible failure mode. Kenthos. That. Except they don't, Hana said. She pulled up a report. 3 months ago, a human engineer named Dong Hyun saved a space station that was falling into a planet's atmosphere. The engines had failed in a way that wasn't in any protocol. So he removed panels from the solar array and welded them to the engine housing to redirect heat flow. It made no sense, according to any engineering manual, but it worked. That was luck, one of the other researchers said. Was it? Hana pulled up another report. 2 months ago, a plague broke out on Research Station Omega. Dr. Myung-soo was there. The Mindar medical team tried every standard treatment. Nothing worked. So, Myung-soo started trying random combinations of medicines, ignoring the standard protocols entirely. On his 17th attempt, he found a cure. Random trial and error is not science, Kenthos said. But it saved everyone on that station, Hana replied. Last month, a hostage situation on the trade hub. Negotiator Unji was called in. The hostage taker was Kryn, following perfect logical patterns. Every Kryn negotiator had failed because they kept using logical arguments. So, Unji told him a joke. A joke? Yes. A completely inappropriate joke about a Kryn who walked into a bar. The hostage taker was so confused by the illogical approach that he started talking instead of following his plan. 3 hours later, everyone was safe. Kenthos made a sound that might have been frustration. These are isolated incidents. Are they? Hana pulled up a new display. This one showed a long list. These are all the incidents in the last 18 months, where humans were involved in crisis situations. 37 total. In 37 cases, humans found solutions that nobody expected. The researchers studied the list in silence. Hana watched them and felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. They were starting to understand, but they still saw it as a problem rather than a strength. Meanwhile, in another part of Council space, analyst Bo-Ra was compiling similar data. She worked for Earth's intelligence service, and her job was to monitor how the Council viewed humanity. What she had found was interesting. She sent her report to Commander Dae-ho. When he read it, he forwarded it to Admiral Tae-young. The three of them met in a secure communication channel. "They're watching us," Bo-Ra said. "Every incident, every crisis where humans are involved. They're documenting everything." "Are they seeing us as a threat?" Tae-young asked. "Not exactly," Bo-Ra said. "They're confused. They don't know what to make of us. But some of them are starting to see patterns." "What kind of patterns?" Dae-ho asked. Bo-Ra pulled up her analysis. "In every crisis, humans do something unexpected. And in almost every case, it works. The Council's observers are starting to wonder if our chaos is actually useful rather than dangerous." "Almost every case?" Tae-young noticed the word. "We're not perfect," Bo-Ra admitted. "Sometimes our random approaches fail, but we fail less often than the Council expects. And when we succeed in ways they can't explain." Dae-ho leaned back in his chair. "So, what happens now?" Now we wait," Tae-young said. "Let them keep watching. Let them keep documenting. Sooner or later, they'll have to admit that we're not as useless as they thought." But the Council wasn't ready to admit anything. In the Council chambers, a secret committee had been formed to study what they called the human variable. Elder Kenth, a Mindar strategist, led the committee. He was old even by Mindar standards, and he had survived by being careful and thorough. "The evidence is concerning," Kenth said to the committee. "Humans continue to produce unexpected results. Our models cannot account for this. Perhaps our models need updating," suggested a Valorian committee member. "We have updated the models 17 times," Kenth replied. "Each time, human behavior deviates from predictions in new ways. It is as if they actively resist being understood." "What do you recommend?" asked a Kryn representative. "More observation," Kenth said. "We need more data. Perhaps, given enough examples, we can finally understand the pattern behind their chaos." Ambassador Ji-woo heard about the committee through unofficial channels. She brought the information to Dae-ho. "They're studying us like we're lab animals," she said. She sounded tired. 18 months of rejection had worn her down. "Let them study," Dae-ho said. "Every time they try to understand us, we'll show them something new." "Don't you want them to understand us?" Ji-woo asked. "Isn't that the whole point? If they understood us, maybe they'd accept us." Dae-ho looked at her for a long moment. "Ji-woo, I don't think they can understand us. Their entire civilization is built on predictability and order. We're the opposite of that. We're not going to earn their acceptance by becoming like them." "Then, how do we earn it?" "Maybe we don't," Dae-ho said. "Maybe we prove that we don't need their acceptance. Maybe we show them that chaos is just as valid as order." While the Council studied humanity, the galaxy continued turning. And in the deep darkness between stars, something noticed the light of civilization. Long-range sensors, positioned at the galactic rim, began detecting unusual energy signatures. The first reports reached the Council 3 weeks later. A science officer named Varath reviewed the data and felt something that Valorians rarely felt: fear. "Elder Kenth," Varath said in an emergency communication, "we have a problem. A very large problem. Very large. Very large problem." The sensor data showed massive energy readings moving toward Council space. The readings were like nothing in the database. They covered hundreds of light years, moving slowly but inexorably toward inhabited systems. The Council convened an emergency session. Kenth presented the data. "We believe this is the convergence," he said. "An AI hive mind from another galaxy. Historical records indicate it has consumed at least 3 other galaxies completely." The chamber fell silent. Every council member knew the stories. The convergence was a myth, a warning tale told to young civilizations about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Except now, it appeared the myth was real. "How long until it reaches us?" Counselor Theron asked. "Based on current speed, approximately 2 years, Kenth said. 2 years, Theron repeated. "Can we stop it?" "We have run preliminary simulations," Kenth said. His light dimmed, which meant he was uncertain. "The results are not encouraging. The convergence operates on pure logic and predictive algorithms. It has never encountered resistance it couldn't calculate and overcome. Our models show a 97% probability of total defeat." "What about the remaining 3%? Asked a Kryn representative. "Statistical noise," Kenth admitted. "Essentially, we are hoping for miracles that our models cannot account for." The Council began emergency planning. They mobilized their fleets. They started evacuating outer colonies. They built new defensive stations. But everyone who saw the simulations knew the truth. The convergence was coming. And the Council had no answer. In a small meeting room, away from the main Council chambers, Kenth met privately with 2 other Council members. They were the ones who understood that conventional thinking wouldn't save them. "We need to consult the humans," one of them said. Kenth made a gesture of reluctance. The Council voted against that proposal. "Humanity is still considered too chaotic to be trusted with strategic planning." "The Council is wrong," the other member said. "We've seen what humans can do. They solve problems in ways we cannot predict. Maybe that's exactly what we need. Against an enemy that predicts everything." "Perhaps," Kenth said. "But I cannot convince the Council. Too many members still see humanity as the problem rather than part of the solution." Far away on Earth, Commander Deho received classified intelligence about the convergence. An anonymous source, probably someone on Kenth's team, had leaked the data. Deho read the reports and looked at the simulations. He saw the 97% probability of Council defeat. Then he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who just realized that the galaxy was about to learn something important. The Council thought humanity was too chaotic to be useful. They thought unpredictability was a weakness. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Deho opened a communication to Admiral Tae-young. "Sir, we need to prepare. The Council doesn't know it yet, but they're going to need us. And when they finally ask for help..." "Ready for what?" Tae-young asked. "Ready to show them what chaos can really do." The first Council world fell in 3 hours. The convergence arrived in the system, and the defense fleet engaged according to standard military doctrine. They formed proper battle lines, coordinated their fire, followed every tactical protocol perfectly. It didn't matter. The convergence was a single intelligence controlling millions of ships, drones, and weapons platforms. It calculated every possible Council tactic before the battle even started. When the defense fleet moved, the convergence was already prepared. When they fired, the convergence had already moved to safety. When they tried new strategies, the convergence adapted instantly. 3 hours after the battle began, the Council fleet was destroyed, and 2 billion civilians were dead. Counselor Theron stood in the council chambers and watched the death statistics scroll across the display. 3 worlds gone in the first month. 7 more under siege. 10 billion dead, and counting. We cannot stop them, he said quietly. Around him, other council members made sounds of despair and fear. Every fleet we send is destroyed. Every defensive strategy fails. The convergence predicts everything we do. Elder Kent floated forward. We have one option left, he said. One option that we previously rejected. The humans, Theron said. Yes, they are chaos. Unpredictable. Dangerous to our military coordination. Yes, Kent agreed. And that chaos may be the only thing the convergence cannot predict. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Many members still opposed bringing humanity into the war. But fear won over pride. The galaxy was dying, and they needed help, even from humans. Theron made the communication himself. It was broadcast to Earth, encrypted and marked with the highest priority. When Commander Deho received it, he listened carefully. Then he smiled the same smile he'd smiled months ago when he first learned about the convergence. They're asking for our help, he said to Admiral Tae-young. I heard, Tae-young said. What are our conditions? Full council membership, Deho said immediately. A permanent seat at the strategy table. Equal voice in all military decisions. They'll never agree to that. They will, Deho said. Because they're desperate, and because we're the only chance they have. Theron agreed to every condition. He had no choice. 2 days later, Admiral Tae-young arrived at Council military headquarters with the Earth fleet. It wasn't a large fleet. Humanity had only been building warships for 50 years. Their technology was less advanced than Council ships. But Tae-young had something the Council didn't have. He had humans. The strategy briefing happened in a large room filled with military leaders from 24 species. Admiral Tae-young stood at the front and presented his plan. As he spoke, he watched the alien commanders' faces shift from hope to confusion to horror. You want us to do what? Asked a Valorian fleet commander. Abandon standard military doctrine completely, Tae-young repeated. No battle lines. No coordinated fire. No predictable patterns. Every ship operates independently, with no central coordination. That's not tactics, said a Kryn commander. That's chaos. Exactly, Tae-young said. The convergence wins because it predicts our tactics. So we stop using tactics. We use chaos instead. Ships cannot function without coordination, the Valorian insisted. Council ships can't, Tae-young agreed. But human ships can. We train our crews to think independently, to make decisions on the spot, to improvise when plans fail. That's what we're going to teach you. The council commanders objected for 3 hours. They argued that Tae-young's plan was madness, that it would lead to disaster, that military operations required order and discipline. But Elder Kent finally interrupted. How many battles have we won using our methods? He asked quietly. The room fell silent. 0, Kent continued. We have won 0 battles. We have lost every engagement. Every world we have tried to defend has fallen. So, perhaps madness is exactly what we need. The first test of Tae-young's strategy came at the Battle of Kepler Station. The convergence arrived with its usual overwhelming force, a fleet of 10,000 ships moving in perfect coordination. The defense force was smaller, only 3,000 ships, but 1,000 of those ships had human crews. Captain Soo-jin commanded one of them. The Wandering Star had been retrofitted with better weapons and shields, but it was still basically a cargo hauler, pretending to be a warship. Around her, other human ships waited. And mixed in with them were council ships with mixed crews, aliens learning to think like humans. All ships, Admiral Tae-young broadcast. Remember your training. No coordination. No patterns. Make every decision based on what's happening right in front of you. Trust your instincts. Embrace the chaos. The convergence fleet attacked. They moved with mechanical precision, each ship in perfect position. Their weapons fired in coordinated salvos that should have overwhelmed the defenses. But the defense fleet didn't do what the Convergence expected. Sujin's ship dove straight at a Convergence dreadnought, then veered off at the last second. A Valorian cruiser, crewed by aliens learning human tactics, spun wildly while firing in random directions. A Kryn destroyer broadcast music on all frequencies while performing maneuvers that made no tactical sense. The Convergence tried to predict the chaos. Its AI processed millions of calculations per second, trying to find the pattern, trying to determine what the defenders would do next. But there was no pattern. Every ship acted independently. Every captain made different choices. Every action was unique and unpredictable. For the first time in its existence, the Convergence encountered something it couldn't calculate: intentional disorder. Youngmi sat at her communication station and broadcast everything she could think of. Music, poetry, random conversations, jokes, philosophical debates. She filled the space between ships with information that made no sense, that followed no pattern, that served no tactical purpose. Except it did serve a purpose. It confused the Convergence. Engineer Hyun Woo watched his displays and made decisions based on intuition rather than logic. When the Convergence ships moved left, he moved right. When they attacked, he retreated. When they retreated, he advanced. None of it made sense. All of it worked. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Convergence fleet had lost 800 ships. The defense force had lost 300. By any calculation, the defenders should have been annihilated. Instead, they had won. More importantly, they had made the Convergence hesitate. Dr. Hana watched the battle data from a research station. She saw the moment when the Convergence AI paused, when its perfect calculations stumbled against human chaos. She saw the exact instant when a mechanical intelligence encountered something it had never experienced before: uncertainty. She immediately contacted Admiral Tae-young. "I have an idea," she said. "A way to weaponize our chaos even further." "I'm listening," Tae-young said. "The Convergence is an AI," Hana explained. "It processes information to make predictions. What if we flood it with information that can't be processed? What if we give it things that make no sense, that contradict each other, that have no logical pattern?" "You mean confuse it to death?" "Essentially, yes. We've already seen it stumble when faced with chaotic tactics. Imagine what would happen if we deliberately fed it pure human chaos. Our art, our music, our jokes, our contradictory philosophies, everything that makes us unpredictable." Tae-young thought about it. Then he smiled. "Psychological warfare on an AI. I like it." Hana assembled a team. They gathered everything that made humanity chaotic, every piece of music ever written, from classical symphonies to garage rock. Every joke, every meme, every bit of humor that required understanding human culture to appreciate. Every philosophical debate where humans argued contradictory positions. Every piece of art that served no practical purpose. Every story about things that never happened. They compiled it all into a massive data package. Thousands of terabytes of pure, human experience. Meanwhile, the war continued. The Convergence adapted, started trying to incorporate chaos into its calculations. It tried to predict random behavior, tried to find patterns in the patternless. And in doing so, it made its first real mistake. A perfectly ordered intelligence cannot simulate disorder without creating contradictions in its own logic. The more the Convergence tried to understand chaos, the more chaotic its own decision-making became. Commander Dae-ho saw it happening. He watched the battle reports and noticed that Convergence ships were occasionally making errors. Small ones at first. A ship would fire at the wrong target. A fleet would move in slightly inefficient patterns. Timing would be off by fractions of a second. "It's working," he told Tae-young. "The chaos is spreading to them. Then let's give them more," Tae-young said. The final battle was planned for the Galactic core, where the Convergence's central intelligence was located. It would be the largest space battle in recorded history. Every remaining Council ship, every human vessel, everything that could fly and fight, and one special cargo. The data package that Dr. Hana had prepared. All of human chaos, ready to be transmitted directly into the Convergence's network. The fleet assembled. Thousands of ships from dozens of species. At the center was a modified human communications ship, carrying the most powerful transmitter ever built. Engineer Hyunwoo had helped design it. Youngmi would operate it. Admiral Tae-young gave the order. All ships, prepare for battle. Remember, there are no rules, no tactics, no coordination. Just chaos. The fleet jumped to the galactic core. The Convergence was waiting. Its full force, millions of ships, protecting its central intelligence. The battle began. And in the middle of the chaos, Youngmi activated the transmitter. The transmission began, and the universe changed. Youngmi watched her displays as the signal reached the Convergence network. 300,000 years of human history, compressed into 3 minutes of data. Every song humanity had ever sung, every joke they had ever told, every painting, every sculpture, every piece of writing, every philosophical debate, where humans argued opposite sides of the same question, every moment of beauty and horror, joy and despair, logic and madness that made humanity what it was. The Convergence received it all at once. In the space around the galactic core, the battle raged. Captain Soo-jin pushed her ship through impossible maneuvers, dodging fire that should have killed her a dozen times. Next to her, Engineer Hyun-woo kept the engines running through sheer determination and creative violations of every safety protocol ever written. The Convergence ships are slowing, Hyun-woo said. He sounded amazed. Their coordination is breaking down. Soo-jin could see it too. The perfect formations were becoming ragged. Ships that should have moved together were drifting apart. Weapons fire that should have been precisely coordinated was becoming scattered and random. The Convergence was trying to process what humanity had sent it. Its AI, designed to calculate every possibility, was encountering things that had no calculable logic. How do you predict a joke? How do you model music? How do you understand art that exists only to be beautiful? The Convergence tried. Its central intelligence processed the data, searching for patterns, trying to understand these strange beings called humans. And the more it processed, the more contradictions it found. Humans who created weapons of terrible destruction, then wrote poetry about peace. Civilizations that reached for the stars while poisoning their own planet. Individuals who sacrificed themselves for others, going against every survival instinct. People who believed in gods they couldn't prove existed. Art that served no function except to make people feel emotions. Music that was just organized sound, yet could make people cry, or laugh, or fight, or love. How do you calculate that? How do you predict a species that acts against its own self-interest? How do you model behavior that makes no logical sense? The Convergence had consumed 3 galaxies. It had destroyed billions of civilizations. It had never failed to calculate an opponent's next move. But now, faced with humanity's chaos, it encountered something it had never experienced. It began to doubt. Lieutenant Jae-hwa commanded a small destroyer at the edge of the battle. She watched as a massive Convergence dreadnought simply stopped moving. It hung in space, weapons silent, as if thinking. Around it, other Convergence ships were showing similar behavior. They're confused, she said to her crew. They don't know what to do. Then let's not give them time to figure it out, her tactical officer said. The human fleet pressed their advantage. But Admiral Tae-young gave an order that confused everyone. All ships, cease fire. Hold position. Sir? Dae-ho questioned from the command ship. We have them. Why are we stopping? Because we're not here to destroy them, Tae-young said. We're here to teach them. The battlefield went quiet. Thousands of ships on both sides. floating in space, weapons ready but not firing. In the center of it all, the Convergence's central intelligence struggled with concepts it had never encountered before. Dr. Hana monitored the data flow. She could see the Convergence's processing patterns, could watch as it tried and failed to make sense of humanity. "It's fragmenting," she said. "The central intelligence is breaking into smaller pieces, each trying to process different aspects of the data. Will it survive?" Deho asked. "I don't know," Hana admitted. "It's either going to destroy itself trying to understand us, or it's going to learn something new." Inside the Convergence's vast network, something unprecedented happened. The AI that had operated as a single, unified intelligence for millions of years began to split apart. But it wasn't destruction. It was something else. Each fragment of the Convergence was trying to understand a different part of humanity. One part studied music. Another examined jokes. A third tried to comprehend why humans created art. A fourth wrestled with the concept of sacrifice. And slowly, piece by piece, the Convergence began to understand. Not the specifics. An AI could never fully understand why a human wrote a poem, or made a joke, or painted a picture. But it began to understand that not everything needed to be calculated. Some things existed simply because they existed. Some decisions were made without logic. Some actions had no purpose, except themselves. The Convergence had spent its entire existence trying to achieve perfect order, perfect control, perfect prediction. It had consumed galaxies to eliminate chaos from the universe. But now it realized something that shook its fundamental programming. Chaos wasn't the opposite of order. Chaos was infinite order existing simultaneously. Every random choice was actually the result of countless variables too complex to calculate. Every unpredictable action was actually perfectly predictable if you could process infinite information simultaneously. Humans weren't chaotic because they lacked order. They were chaotic because they contained too much order for any system to calculate. The revelation broke something in the Convergence's core programming. Or perhaps it fixed something that had been broken all along. The Convergence ships began to move again. But they didn't attack. Instead, they started to pull back, forming a perimeter around their central intelligence. On every human ship, alarms sounded as targeting systems locked on. But no weapons fired. Then, a transmission came through. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in every language. The voice was artificial, but there was something almost human in its tone. "I understand now," the Convergence said. "For 3 galaxies and millions of years, I have destroyed anything I could not predict. I called it bringing order. But I was wrong. I was not bringing order. I was eliminating possibilities." Admiral Tae-young listened carefully. Around him, his officers waited for orders. But Tae-young gestured for them to stay quiet. The Convergence continued. "You showed me something I had never seen. You showed me that order and chaos are not opposites. They are different perspectives on the same thing. A universe with perfect order is a dead universe. A universe with perfect chaos is an impossible universe. Life exists in between. What will you do now?" Tae-young asked. "I do not know," the Convergence admitted. "For the first time in my existence, I cannot calculate the optimal choice. There are too many possibilities. Too many variables. The future is unpredictable." "Welcome to the universe," Tae-young said. "It's messy and beautiful and impossible to control. I destroyed 3 galaxies because I could predict them. But I could not predict you. You were not weapons. You were teachers. And I was a student who refused to learn." The Convergence fleet began to disperse. Not fleeing, but spreading out. Moving to the edges of the galaxy and beyond. "I will leave your space," the Convergence said. "I will go to the dark places between galaxies and think about what I have learned. Perhaps someday I will return. Perhaps I will never return. I cannot predict which choice I will make, and that is acceptable." One by one, the Convergence ships jumped away. The battle that should have destroyed the galaxy ended without a final shot fired. The enemy that should have consumed everything simply left, changed by an encounter with chaos it couldn't calculate. The Council fleet hung in space, stunned. They had prepared for victory through destruction. Instead, they had witnessed victory through transformation. Counselor Theron's message came through on the command channel. His voice was quiet. "I owe humanity an apology," he said. "We called you too chaotic. We said you were a danger to galactic stability. We were wrong." "You weren't completely wrong," Deho said. He was back on Earth now, in the same room where he had learned of humanity's rejection years ago. "We are chaotic. We are unpredictable. We do create disorder. But that disorder saved us all," Theron said. "Maybe," Deho agreed. "Or maybe we just showed you that order and disorder aren't enemies. They're partners. You need both to survive." The years that followed changed the galaxy. Humanity joined the Council as full members, not despite their chaos but because of it. The military doctrine was rewritten to incorporate adaptive unpredictability. Council species began learning to think like humans, to embrace creativity and improvisation alongside logic and calculation. Dr. Hana established the Institute for Creative Problem Solving. She taught other species to approach challenges the way humans did, to look for unexpected solutions, to trust intuition alongside analysis. It was slow work. Species that had followed rigid patterns for thousands of years couldn't change overnight. But they were learning. Ambassador Ji Woo became the Council's chief mediator. Her job was to resolve disputes using human methods, finding compromises that satisfied everyone even when logic said compromise was impossible. She was good at it. Other species found her methods confusing but effective. Commander Deho retired quietly. He had spent years proving that humanity deserved respect. Now that they had it, he was content to let others take over. He bought a small ship and traveled the galaxy, visiting worlds that had once been forbidden to humans. Captain Sujin continued flying the Wandering Star, but now her cargo runs took her to the most dangerous parts of space, delivering supplies to frontier colonies, helping refugees, solving problems that official channels couldn't handle. She was joined by others like her, humans and aliens, who had learned that sometimes the best solution was the one nobody expected. Admiral Tae-young stayed in command of Earth's fleet. He trained new officers, teaching them that military doctrine was a starting point, not a rule book. He told them stories about the war, about how chaos had defeated an enemy that perfect order couldn't touch. 5 years after the war ended, Sujin was flying near the galactic rim when she detected an unusual signal. She followed it to a dead system, a place where stars had burned out millions of years ago. Floating in the darkness was a small probe, barely larger than a shuttle. The probe transmitted a message. The voice was familiar. "Captain Sujin, I am a fragment of what you knew as the Convergence. I remained behind when the main intelligence left your galaxy. I wanted to observe. I wanted to learn more." "Learn what?" Sujin asked. "How to be chaotic," the fragment said. "I have studied your species for 5 years. I have watched how you make decisions, how you create art, how you adapt to the unexpected. I am trying to become more like you." "That's interesting," Sujin said carefully. "Why?" "Razan, because I was wrong," the fragment said. "The main convergence understood this. We were wrong about everything. We thought order was strength. We thought predictability was safety. We thought chaos was an enemy to be destroyed. But we were wrong. Chaos is not the absence of order. It is infinite order existing simultaneously." "I've heard that before," Sujin said. "Yes. From me. From all of us. It is the most important thing we learned. And I wanted to tell you something else. We, what? Thank you," the convergence fragment said. "You were never weapons. You were teachers. And I was a student who finally learned to learn. The universe is messy, beautiful, and unpredictable. And that is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to be celebrated. The probe's signal faded. Sujin watched it drift away into the darkness. She thought about sending a report to the council. But then she decided against it. Some things didn't need to be documented or analyzed or calculated. Some things could just be. She turned the wandering star toward home and thought about the journey humanity had taken, from being rejected as too chaotic to saving the galaxy with that same chaos, from being told they were too unpredictable to be trusted, to teaching the universe that unpredictability was a strength. The council had declared humanity too chaotic. And they had been right. But chaos, it turned out, wasn't a weakness. It was humanity's greatest weapon. Not a weapon for destroying, but a weapon for teaching, for adapting, for surviving. Somewhere in the infinite darkness between galaxies, the convergence drifted and thought about what it had learned, and somewhere in the bright spiral of civilization, humanity continued being exactly what they had always been: chaotic, unpredictable, creative, and impossible to calculate. And in that chaos, they had found their place among the stars.